So I'm joined today with Larry Hill of Leaping Fox. Welcome to AssemblyLine, Larry.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks very much.
I'm really looking forward to sharing your story with listeners and learning more about the history of Leaping Fox. I know you have two apps currently on the App Exchange. We're going to be focusing the majority of our talk today on Express Console. But maybe before we get into the weeds, you could give some background to folks on how you got into Salesforce and the background of the business, the app itself, who it's serving, and what problems it's solving.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I've been selling forever. I've been selling since the '80s. I go quite a ways back to green screens and you know uh, not much of a user experience. I worked for IBM originally selling mainframes, so way back there. Used a variety of to do apps and so forth over the years. I joined Apple and outliners were very popular. So you could at least list everything up on the screen. They get all clogged, and the problem was they weren't connected to the CRM system, so that, you couldn't phone somebody, you couldn't do anything. It was just a basically to do list. So I've been in and around technology my whole career, and I remember finding ACT in the '90s, which I really kind of liked. I liked the approach where you get a list of either accounts, contacts, or opportunities on the left, and click on one, you get the details on the right. Very basic operation, which actually I have stolen from my own app and extended quite a bit, but same kind of an idea. So I I've been doing I've done a number of startups in the 2000s, and as the chief revenue officer, it inevitably came down to, what do you want to use for CRM? And I tried in the '90s I tried one called Daylight, which was a client server thing. It was kind of a mess. Looked at Sugar CRM and some of the other ones, and then I just thought, okay, let's take a look at Salesforce. And, it was quick. It was on the rise. This is in the early, 2010s. Everybody was doing it. So I thought, okay. Um, and what I turned into was not only the, head of sales, but also the sysadmin for Salesforce. You want
Acc-
that? You manage it.
the accidental admin, right?
Completely. Like, no, never had the aspiration to do that. But now I'm on my third org, as they say, in the Salesforce world, right? I've created three. I have one for, my own company now. I think I'm up over 200,000 contacts, and I manage the thing. I spent a good part of last week, on Chat GPT, trying to teach it a set of rules to manipulate contacts as I import them from my Apollo system. Right. So I've really come sort of full bore on the admin side. Um, but the issue has always been with Salesforce is that it's the one to use, and it's also kind of ornery. It's kind of clunky. It's a little slow. It's not a gem to use. So a couple of years ago, when they opened up the Lightning Web Components API, I went, okay, here's a chance to put my money where my mouth is and see if I can do a little bit better. And I worked up a prototype in Excel and managed to get myself to a guy by the name of Kevin Hill, no relation. But he was the senior product manager for the platform that all of the clouds run on. I got to him and I just said, listen, would you mind if I did a little riff on your user interface? Held my breath. And he goes, oh, no, no, that'd be great. That's why we did Lightning Web Components. That was the whole reason. We still get paid for a seat. So knock yourself out. So I did. And, hundreds of thousands of dollars later, I've got a product called Express Console, which you can do some really cool things in Lightning Web Components that you can't do in regular Lightning. There's a bunch of user interface techniques, pop-ups, cascading pop-ups. It's also really fast because one of the sort of hidden things about LWC that nobody knows about is that it's written in HTML5, which I've just told you everything I know about it, except for the fact that it allows code to run in the browser, right? So my whole user interface actually runs in the browser. So it's not going back to the server for screenshots, just for data, right? So it's like as fast as your org ever went. People say, "Well, you're on a little development server there, right?" And I go, "No, let's try it on yours. It's fast, right?" So there's been sort of a confluence of technological advances, and even some people have probably noticed that their orgs have gotten a little bit faster, in the last couple of years. Salesforce has done this massive rewrite of all the base components into Lightning Web Components just to take advantage of it. But they're still in Aura, which is the old framework. Lightning Web Components is the new framework, right? So it's getting faster. It's never going to be, fast, right? But it is the platform that they're doing all the development on now. And I'm a little bit ahead of them because I've done sort of a riff on the user interface and, just coming to market with it this year.
That's so cool. So, okay, I want to pause and just clarify a few things because you said you got in front of Kevin Hill. And I'm really curious. I'm sure a lot of folks listening would love to, share an MVP or even just like a mock-up. Sounds like you built something in Excel, um, and get some feedback from folks at Salesforce. But it's often
Yeah.
hard to get in front of them. So I'm curious if you could. Was Kevin already in your network, or you knew someone that knew him? How did you get that meeting? Because I think a lot of people would be interested.
Well, I've been doing large enterprise sales for most of my career, and I just know how to get to people.
Hmm.
You get to them and say, "Listen, I got this idea that I'd like to share with you, and if it sounds interesting enough, then make some time." Um, I mean, it was not easy to find out exactly who he is, or who was the right person in the massive Salesforce. I basically hit up. I would constantly. I mean, when they were first promoting Lightning Web Components, they always had an LWC booth at Dreamforce and at the World Tours.
Hmm.
So I would just go to those, and inevitably there would be a product manager there, and I would say, "Who's the who's the guy to talk to?" And it turned out to be Kevin Hill. They
Hmm.
actually, I mean, Maeve Tuntavate shows up at some of these. I mean, she's well up the line in terms of LWC development. Um, Greg Whitworth owns all of it, and 15 other things. He shows up at the booth. So actually, going to the booths and asking who's there and what their responsibilities are is a pretty good place to start.
So showing up in person for face to face still relevant in
Oh, yeah,
today's AI
yeah,
world, huh?
so much more effective than email.
Yeah, yeah. It's a lot easier to ignore an email than someone who's standing right in front of you, I suppose.
Yeah, but I've also learned how I'm hard to be ignored. So
Well, okay. So you've got your Excel mockup. You've gotten some good feedback. Sounds like from Kevin. Uh, did you then get to building right away, or did you reach out to anyone else to do any sort of validation of the idea, or had you just seen enough in the space from your own experience that you knew, um, improving the
there
UX was
was,
the way
and
to
I'm
go?
having trouble remembering what it was. There was a quick mock-up framework that I asked them. I paid them some money to do a mock-up for me, and they didn't come up with anything. And I did some research and found that they were really inefficient in cross-object uh, computation. And my app is all cross-object. You can look at activities underneath an opportunity. It's all a mix on my
Hmm.
app. So I kind of gave up on them. And Salesforce actually had a partner networking event in New York City.
Oh,
Right.
cool.
I just sort of wandered around. I looked over and like, oh, there's two guys who look approachable. And I trotted over and introduced myself. And it turned out to be the US sales rep for a company called Extentia, like Extent IA, right?
Hmm.
And his main customer in the New York area. So chatted with them. The rep went to the men's room. I said, "Okay, so how are these guys to work with? Any good?" Customer said, "Yeah, but you got to understand it. You got to drop at least $100,000 to get an app up on the App Exchange. You just really can't do it for less." This is a couple of years ago. And it turned out to be true. I was probably in 150 before I had something that I could put up. But I talked to him and he said, "Yeah, these guys are great." Started working with them, and I've been working with them for a couple of years now, and they've done all of the development. It's an Indian outfit, so there's a little bit lost in translation, but the rates make up for it. They're a quarter of what they are in the United States. So I've got millions of dollars of development done for a fraction of that. And it's worked quite well. They've recently been acquired by Merkle, which is owned by the Japanese company Dentsu. But I would
Okay.
recommend them wholeheartedly. They're great people to work with, and we do. Uh, I've got my ticketing system up on Jira, and I could throw an idea, in there, and I get feedback on it the next morning, and then every 2 weeks we sit down and we go through all of the tickets that are outstanding and so forth. And as long as I do it at 8:30 in the morning my time, that's 7 o'clock at night in India. They're 11 and a half hours or 12 and a half hours, depending on, they don't change the time over there.
Gotcha.
And they're a half an hour different, which I've always, you know, it's kind of curious. So, early morning for us is early evening for them. And I understand that much of the Indian economy works from like 10 in the morning till 7 or 8 at night, just to be oriented a little bit more closely to the United States.
I see. Yeah, so it's funny. So I feel like most founders like yourself will skew either on the business side or the technical side. You mentioned being about 150K invested before you had something live on the App
Yeah.
Exchange, and I think maybe some technical founders would think, "Wow, I think I could get something up for less than that." But when you consider the value of your time, right, spent building, in your case, you're literally investing dollars, since you're more on the business side.
Yep.
But technical founders will end up spending a lot of time themselves building, going through
Yeah.
security review, getting it up there, and that's time that could have been spent elsewhere, right? So that sounds about right. That in the end, it's going to cost around there, either in dollars, real dollars, or in your time.
Yeah. I mean, that translates into probably 3,000 hours,
Hmm.
of work, right?
Gotcha.
Maybe
Yeah.
3,500. And that's kind of, I guess, what it takes. That's probably the best translation for, what does it take to get up on the App Exchange?
Hmm. So okay, so you've got your prototype built with your development team. Um, Now I noticed on the App Exchange you have a freemium model. So I was wondering if you could expand a little bit on like how you came about your pricing strategy.
Well, in the typical, I mean, I'm in sort of the product led growth category, right?
Okay.
Build it, and
Yeah.
if it's cool enough, they will come. The problem the challenge has been, I should say, is that it has to be installed by an admin, and so you get tied up in the bureaucracy of companies and approvals and security and all that. And even though, I mean, Salesforce really puts you through the ringer in terms of a security review, and because I was literally the first LWC app they'd ever seen, it just set it set off, alarms all over the place. I mean, they had to actually extend their engine to be able to, review and that my app was secure. And it didn't hurt that Extentia had a really trusted relationship with Salesforce. They had done 25 or 30 App Exchange apps at that
Well,
point.
that helps.
Right. Yeah, it really did. Because before their algorithm could understand what was going on, Extension was able to say, "Hey, it's us. This is cool. We're not doing anything funky here." And
Hmm.
it's they've improved the security engine since, and I passed with flying colors, but it was kind of dicey at the beginning because they'd literally never seen an LWC app before,
Hmm.
and it's completely different from Lightning. On the back end.
Hmm. So you mentioned that admins got to install it. I'm curious. You're discovered, of course, on the App Exchange, I would assume more often than not, by admins, but that's not really necessarily your end user. I mean, it's a improvement to the overall UI and UX of Salesforce in general. So,
Yes.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but would it be fair to say that you consider uh your main user the sales reps that are leveraging Salesforce, or is
Absolutely.
there okay? Are
Though,
there other personas that you consider users, or is it really?
well, there's the benefits are kind of twofold because if Salesforce is easier to use and salespeople use it more, there'll be more deal data in it. And management is always, wouldn't it be interesting to be able to just take a look at an opportunity and get a sense for what's going on in it rather than having to grill the salesperson? Because then you can have a whole different conversation, other than tell, okay, bring me up to speed on X, Y, and Z. And 10 minutes in, then you start having meaningful conversation. Management instead can say, okay, I see you're here and I see the last step is there. And I can see you get activity in there for next week. What's happening in between? You can get right down to let's cooperate or synchronize on what's going on in a deal.
Hmm.
So there's benefits for both. I mean, salespeople love it because it is so much easier to use than regular, clunky old Salesforce. It's just the response time is really fast. Pop-ups, for any major object, an account, an opportunity, or a contact. If you just hover on the name, it's in blue, and you get a pop-up that has the 6 or 8 key fields, like for a contact, it's, email, phone number, position, company, that sort of thing. It just
Hmm.
pops up right there in edit mode. So if you're looking to make, I mean, one of the pain points in Salesforce for me for years was if I want to change something in somebody's record, I have to go find them. Then I've got to get into edit mode. Then I've got to get to the right fields, and then type, save, and the whole thing takes longer than I would like.
Hmm.
And with pop-ups, you can you can do that very quickly. It's just a hover, and the cursor is already onto the end of the first field, so you can just start typing, tab your way through it. So one of the other principles that I've used is once your hands are on the keyboard, don't make the user go back and forth between keyboard, mouse, keyboard. I need to type in something here, then I have to mouse over to the next field because it's 8 fields away from the one I'm on, and that sort of go back and forth. Where it takes a minute just to get in there and say call Bob. You know, I want that to be 15 seconds.
Yeah.
So, the pop-ups make that really easy, and you can do the cross object, interrogation there, because if you got a contact pop up there, you hover on the account that's on it, and you get another pop-up, and you can go right up, and then you've got website, you've got all sorts of places you can jump off to, you can send an immediate email. So you're doing this all on one screen, and the main screen has not changed. You're just
Mm.
doing
Which makes it
pop-ups,
fast,
which
really
I
fast.
think is I don't want to get into too much hype here, but I think this is the future of SaaS applications because too many of them were written with just, time to market in mind. Let's just get some screens going, right? So
Hmm.
they're always taking you off somewhere, bringing you back. Um, looking through emails in Salesforce is excruciating because you click on one, it takes you to a different screen, then you return and it hasn't highlighted the one you just looked at. And a lot of times you pick the same one, just like, I said, what was, you got a lot of read this, read this, read that, it's hard to remember which one of those did I, and it's dumb. I can take a whole list of emails and you can just hover on each one and have them pop up and get the details. So what I've tried to do here is I think I've cut the clicks about in half. There's probably 50% clicks of regular Salesforce in my app, and I've taken the principle, yeah, it's sort of a prioritizing principle that I like to call in lofty terms as Pareto optimality for Salesforce, which is the old 80-20 rule, right? What I've taken is the 20% of function. I'm not trying to boil the ocean. There's way too much function in the sales cloud to completely reproduce it. But I've taken the 20% of functions that salespeople use 80% of the time and optimized those. And so the app just shows up as a tab, that you can put anywhere you want in
Hmm.
the regular lightning screen. And, my premise has been a salesperson can probably spend 80% of their day in that tab without getting, 40 other tabs going all over the place. That's another one of the pain points is you keep opening tabs for every time you click on something. And then when you want to go back to a contact or something, it's like, okay, which one of these 40 tabs, you need to click through them and it's dumb. Right.
Yeah.
And the
Well, you
sales
got
people that,
yeah.
they tried to come up with made it worse. You had sub tabs within tabs. So you ended up with 3 levels of tabs and then you're really lost. I mean, it's nuts.
Well, I mean, I love the name because it's very succinct, and I think it gives a good idea of the functionality of the tool right away. Express console, it's
Thanks.
fast. You're in that one single console. I'm curious though too. You kind of alluded to this. So your user is the majority of the sales reps, um, but I'm guessing your prospective buyer would be management, the CRO, and I'm curious if that how you've tackled that when you've got, you're discovered by the admin, you're used by the sales rep, but the person controlling the budget
Decision
actually
makers,
is.
yeah, CRO.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's my personas are a little bit fractured, right? Because I focused in more recently on sales operations because they're the ones that are typically looking around for the CRO for new apps. The CRO will say, I need this or I need that. I need a new enablement tool. I need a sequencing tool. I need this, that, or the other. And sales operations looks around. Um, the tricky part with sales operations is that they're usually not looking to add to their stack. They're trying to cut their stack down. Right. So, marketing to them, can be a challenge. Uh, the the premise or the value proposition is that you might be able to either get rid of or reduce the usage of 2 or 3 other apps if you concentrate in on the express console because reps literally um, you get a list of your opportunities. You can expand each one to see what the last 6 or 8 activities were within that. And then you get a built-in to-do list that you can drag, items over to and say, yeah, I want to do that today. And the to-do list I call it today because it's just what is on today's calendar. And, drag and drop has been around for 15 years, right? Online, but not in Salesforce. Uh, you drag and drop to prioritize. And then you can do cool little things like LWC things. Like if you put, there's no way in activities. It used to frustrate me. And as a lot of salespeople, I would get in the mode of, I'm going to block off an hour and a half tomorrow morning and make some calls because you get better at them as you go through, especially if you're cold or warm calling. Um, there was no way to categorize a call task from a regular to do task, right? You just got this whole big list. So Lightning Web Components, if you put the first word of the subject of a task, like call Larry, it categorizes them in calls. So you got a separate, this to do capability. You have basically who do I have to call, what do I have to do, and then it shows what's on your calendar. So it's like everything you need to know in just one small little area uh, for what 80% of your day. And that capability is what I've replicated in a Chrome extension called Express Tasks. So that you don't need the Express console for. That runs it just in a Chrome browser and attaches directly to your Salesforce. You just sign in through it. Your admin again has to turn it on, because of Salesforce put some security in place
Right.
just last fall.
Right,
It
right.
was driving people crazy. If remember Dooley, the to
Yes.
do it blew up and got really big and then got bought and basically disappeared from the marketplace because you couldn't just sign up and sign through into your Salesforce. You had to get an admin to do it. And it closed a big security hole, but at the same time, it cut out an option for a lot of salespeople because getting on the stack is a difficult thing to do. I mean, admins and sales ops are all, they're all looking to cut the stack down. They're not real, high priority in terms of adding things to it because it's just complexity. And, most of them are kind of overworked, in the first place, kind of trying to manage a Salesforce operation. So it's, yeah, it's been interesting.
It's a good. It was definitely a good move security wise. I think to your point,
Yeah,
there's probably a lot of ISVs that are like, "Oh, this is going to add a lot of friction to my onboarding," but
it is, but it
that's
was the
that's the
right thing
trade
to
off.
do.
Right, right. So I want to talk a little bit about lead gen and lead nurturing. So you mentioned earlier about doing some data enrichment with ChatGPT
Yeah.
from leads from Apollo, which I know is a very popular tool. And I'm curious, would you say so? Would you say the majority of your leads are from outbound strategies that you're leveraging using tools like Apollo, or you're doing a lot of are you seeing more leads come inbound from the App Exchange? Where does it split for you?
It's a pretty good mix. I see some. I've got a pretty good user guide on the app, so I've had some people. I don't know if my settings are wrong or whether it's just Salesforce, but someone can download from the App Exchange and I don't hear about it. And I found people like, "Whoa, I had a download the other day," and I'll go check in with them, and I said, "Can I show you around?" And they said, "Oh, no, no, we read the user guide. It's we're doing fine." Which, I mean, it's a very comprehensive user guide. So, it was like 2 full weekends of my life going through literally every single screen on the entire app and explaining it. And my developers have kept it up to date nicely. But it's sort of a mix. There's some from the App Exchange. I'm doing about 100 emails a day out to. I'm focusing on sales operations right now because that seems to be. I mean, especially in the second half of a quarter, it's the salespeople are really just focusing on the quarter, right? They do not have any time to look around or do anything but try and survive for another quarter by making the number or at least
Hmm.
get close. In the second half of quarters, I focused in particular on sales operations and just to, I mean, my approach right now is optimizing Salesforce. What if you had a window into Salesforce that salespeople would really use? How would life be different? Well, yeah, one, they'd have, there'd be better productivity there for sure, but there'd also be a lot more deal data in Salesforce. Instead of, I mean, how many sales managers, go in, take a look at a prospect, and there's a 2-week old stale next step, that gets updated 5 minutes before the forecast call. And there might be a meeting or two. There may or may not be notes, but it's very hard to get a sense of what's going on. If a salesperson is operating in Salesforce to run their day, there's just a wealth of information there for sales management to review and to coach. Because
Hmm.
that's the second biggest piece is you need that coaching capability. And I've done a bridge. Another kind of interesting thing you can do with LWC is I've been able to bridge between the next step field, which is just the biggest misnomer, I think, in the entire app, because the next step by definition is an activity. It's what are you going to do next? And
Hmm.
in Salesforce, it's a field, right? They have activities, but next step is a field. So I've been able to bridge the two. And if you create an activity and designate it, it's just a right click to designate it as the next step. It updates the back end with the subject of the activity. And even if you change it, so all the reports, the next step reports still work. And even if you change it on the back end, it changes the subject of the activity. So I've gotten like a two-way communication going there with LWC. So it makes it possible. And this is a way a lot of people get into doing activities in Salesforce. It's just let me have my next step in there. Because the next step is rarely send brochures or something where you can just get it done and go. It's usually chasing after somebody to set up the next meeting or call or activity, right?
Hmm.
So within the activity, pop up in the Express console, there's a little calendar item where you can, it'll drop the date in it right at the top of the comments field. And you can say, left another message, please call me, or send an email this time. So it lets you, it's almost like a little mini opportunity. You can track the progress of that activity because you're always, rather than having to scan through 50 emails that are mostly about the last meeting, you can keep a succinct little series of what the sequence of attempts have been of outreaches, and get a sense very quickly by just looking at it of what you need to do next. Is it time for an email? Is it time for a LinkedIn? Is it time for a phone call? Um, it just lets you be much more the salesperson, be much more organized around what that next step is going to be, what the history's been, and planning out the next move.
I imagine this you're leveraging Express Console in your own partner business org for managing
Yeah,
leads yourself. So that's nice that you get when you see something that needs tweaking as a user, you're able to kind of
yeah,
get
yeah.
get your
That
own
has been
feedback,
part of
work
it.
on your
That's
own
been
feedback.
almost the best part of it, right? Is I come up with an idea and go, oh, geez, I'd really like to see this, right? And I fill out a ticket, and 2 weeks later, it's there,
Nice.
right?
And
I've never been in that position in my life where I can just go, hey, you know what I'd like? Let's see it up on the screen.
so you mentioned you're sending about 100 emails a day. I'm curious, has that been a good channel for you? Like, what kind of response rates are you getting, or open rates, if you're tracking
Email is
that?
pretty tricky. I get a 30 or 40% open rate
Hmm.
and probably a 5 or 10% click rate. Um, but
That's
it
pretty
narrows
good, I
down.
think.
Yeah,
That sounds
yeah.
very good. Yeah.
Yeah, we get some. There's a lot of people sort of tire kicking out there, and the tricky thing with email marketing these days is that the first open is usually a bot. It's the
Yes.
security bot. So I don't really pay attention unless something's been opened 2 or 3 times, because I know for a long time I would notice, wow, they opened the email and clicked on every link in the email, right? I thought, boy, aren't they interested? It's like, no, they're
Yeah.
not. The bot is making
The
sure there's not a
bots.
bomb in there someplace, right?
That's true. That's
So
smart to wait
yeah, so
and
you've
track
got to
three
get,
clicks.
I really only pay attention if I've got, 3 opens and a couple of clicks,
Yeah.
because
Smart.
that generally, says to me they're passing it around a little bit. Oh, this looks interesting. Pass it to somebody else in sales ops or management, to take a look at it. Um, but I've also done an interesting service called Leader Pro,
Hmm.
like Leader without the LEADR Pro. Uh, they won they won some kind of, not a demo jam, but a new idea competition on LinkedIn about 2 years ago, where they basically pay people to do demos, right? They'll pay 75 or $100. You can actually now set your own price for a demo. Now, on the back end, it costs you a couple of hundred. So you get to put in, I've got 8 qualifying questions in there. And usually when they pop up, I'll ask a couple more questions to see whether I want to pay my couple $100 to have them do a demo. And about 50% of them are just looking for, the 75 bucks. And it becomes, when I question a little bit more deeply, they have to include their LinkedIn
Mm.
address. You can go and find out whether they're legitimate, whether you know, they're still employed, that sort of thing. Um, and then with some close questioning, you can usually narrow that down. So that's been, I mean, if you take a look at, cost per, prospect, right? Or cost per lead,
Hmm.
um, everything put together, it's probably a couple $100 per, well qualified, like a marketing qualified lead, right? So they're doing quite a bit of it. They've had a lot of people sign up, and I get 2, 3 decently qualified ones each month. And I'm in conversations with 2 Fortune 1000 companies right now because of that, who
Wow.
we would not have found me on the App Exchange.
I mean, that's a big deal like that can more than pay for a service. I mean, it all kind of depends on your own individual coca and the actual pricing of your app, of course. But
Generally
um,
speaking, I've got a couple $1,000 in. It only takes one, right?
yeah,
I've got 2 percolating. So that's going to be 100% ROI there fairly
that's
quickly.
great. We were chatting earlier. I knew that you had some very heavy hitter prospects with those Fortune 1000s, but I didn't
Yeah.
realize that they came from Leader Pro. So that's a really cool tactic and tool
Well,
folks could look
yeah,
into.
one of them did. I mean, a CTO for a business division who just knew that they had. I mean, the problem out there is generally known as adoption.
Hmm.
right? Salespeople just there's too many of them that just don't like using Salesforce.
Yeah.
And there's, you got to wade through. There is CRM reluctance. Some of them don't like to use any CRM system. I don't care what it is. Some of them are reluctant to put data in because they don't want management seeing too much, right? And then some just don't like Salesforce. So I'm trying to change the cost equation there for a salesperson that says, well, if this is the easiest place to be organized, maybe it's not so dangerous to put a lot of information in there that management might see because they're going to ask you about it sooner or later anyway.
Yeah.
And, might as well have it in there. I've got a couple of very nice summary formats, not exactly reports, but just views where, management can take a look at a forecast screen and then expand each deal with like you cannot do in Excel and just see what's been going on in the deal. And it's a great vehicle for conversation, a one-on-one with a rep. It's like, okay, let's take a look at this deal, see what's been going on. Oh, you haven't been using Salesforce very much, have you? Maybe you want to maybe you want to get some more activity in there, right?
Well, you mentioned adoption. We just had on the show Christian, the founder of Go Elephant, and that's
Yes.
Salesforce adoption is something that's very near and dear to their hearts. So it sounds like a good opportunity for y'all to partner. But I want to also mention you talked about Leader Pro winning not a demo jam, but you kind of likened it to the LinkedIn contest. And that made me think about how Leaping Fox actually has won two demo jams.
Oh yeah, thanks.
One being a Dreamforce LWC demo jam, and another one being a Salesforce SE demo jam from
Yeah.
the AppExchange marketing program. So I'm curious if you could walk through how you got involved with both. And I might even want to take a deeper dive into the latter because
Yeah.
the AppExchange marketing program, which I think maybe has been rebranded now, I have to double check, but
I can never remember what the name is. They've rebranded.
everything's rebranded if you wait
I
long
don't
enough
think
in
they threw
Salesforce.
Agent Force on it, but
Yeah, not yet.
yeah.
But I know, getting in front of Salesforce SEs is something a lot of ISVs are keen to do. So, yeah, if you could give some background on how you got involved in both of those, that'd be great.
Yeah, well, I knew the powers that be, in the LWC world, and they said, "Hey, we're gonna do a demo jam at Dreamforce," and I popped it up, and I remember like nobody had ever seen anything like it,
Hmm.
like literally, and it was kind of fun because the company I beat was Velocity. They were one of the other competitors.
Hmm.
They got bought by Salesforce about 6 months later for a billion
Sure.
four. Now they had, I mean, there was a lot of IP there that they had outside of LWC, but it was. I've done some very innovative things because I'm sort of halfway in between the issue that you run into with a lot of these third party apps. If you're using Outreach or Clarity or SalesLoft or Mixmax or any of those prospecting tools, is you can see your pipeline, you can see your activities and so forth. The format is completely different. The user interface is completely different, and you're having to learn another app. And, I find in business, I mean, going back to the days of DOS, where user interfaces were completely different, I found that people could really get to know two or three apps. And after that, they were just very casual users, right? It three different user experiences are about the limit for a lot of people in terms of like everyday use. So I've tried to stay fairly close to Salesforce, all the same fonts. Yeah, I mean, it looks very much like Salesforce, only cleaner.
Hmm.
So I've tried to stay close like that, but still, like at the LWC demo jam, nobody had ever seen like you can do that with Salesforce. It doesn't look like lightning. It looks cleaner, faster, and easier. Same thing with the SE demo jam. There were, I think there was something like 95 or 100 SEs on it. It was actually a very popular program while they were running it. And,
They're not running it anymore.
no, they're, they're thinking that they're going to cook up, you know, for $5,000, allow you to record a demo and put it up on their library on, what is it, Salesforce
Mm,
Plus,
I
where they're
see.
putting a lot of that stuff. So they, for one reason or another, they decided not to run the competition anymore, which is a shame because they're running it 4 times a year, and a lot of SEs would tune in either in the moment to find out what was new and interesting, or look at the recordings. So I think they,
Was that a paid competition?
yeah, which is the tricky part for a startup, is that it was $5,000. It's
Not
me
cheap,
peeling $50, $100 bills out of my wallet, right? I happen to,
but the SEs can drive a lot of business. I know. I mean, it's
they
that
can.
that certainly not chump change, but it, those are definitely some good
And I've
eyeballs
had
to
some
have on your
extended
app.
conversations with a couple of them, coming out of that. Um, so it's been, yeah, it was a good program. The problem is, you need to have, I don't know, probably $1 million in revenue
Hmm.
to start to be able to afford the AppExchange marketing program, or whatever they've turned it into, because those things are all 5, 7, 10 grand a pop.
Hmm.
Still a little bit expensive for me.
Yeah. Well, that's very cool though. I mean, I'd imagine you got certainly a spike in leads following both those wins. So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah, and the SEs, I mean, they really do know what's going on, and I so I thought, oh, there's something, and Apollo, you can get a lot of names, so I got a couple hundred SEs and started marketing into them,
mhm.
and I noticed like a lot of, a lot of opens, a lot of clicks, and then flatlined.
Hmm.
Salesforce's security system noticed me and shut me down completely.
Oh,
It was
interesting.
heartbreaking because I just thought, oh, this is great. I'm on to these guys are the mother lode, right?
You were getting good traction though beforehand, I
Oh,
guess, is
really good
the
traction. And then literally it went to zero. No clicks, no opens. And the only way that's possible is if their security system said, yeah, let's not allow this email in. It's spam.
yeah. Well, that's a bummer. Well, this has been great. We should wrap up, but before we do, I'm curious if you could share any like major lessons learned through the process, that maybe someone who's much earlier on their ISV journey could benefit from hearing.
Well, I'll tell you, the probably the main one is offshore resources. I mean, Salesforce has they call them product development organizations. They're actually certified to build AppExchange apps.
Hmm.
And they know their way around. And when you're just starting, I mean, uh, I get the perspective of, if you're working nights and weekends doing your own coding, that's that's going to be a less expensive way of doing it. But for I don't know, $50-ish an hour, you can get some pretty good development done offshore. And I would
Hmm.
heartily recommend Extentia. They've been great people to work with. So that's probably one of the main learnings. And then it's just a matter of networking around inside the ecosystem, right? Because I constantly am getting interesting ideas and leads from different people, in Salesforce product management, from the salespeople. Got a good lead. I played golf with an AE last summer, um, and I'm trying to talk him into doing just a little webinar for his customers.
Hmm.
But even Salesforce AEs, especially at the low end, um, they can be challenged to just get their customers to respond. I mean, it's a really busy market right now. You can't. There's not a lot of people jumping up, going, "Oh, a new idea! Yeah, let's take a look." Right? I noticed especially since the pandemic, companies have skinnied down so much that everybody's really busy. I mean,
Hmm.
it's got to be a pretty compelling pain. And I tell you, if they, the amount of money that people throw into Salesforce, uh, and the ROI can be negligible in a lot of places if they don't have adoption.
Right.
It's certainly a big enough issue. And I like to call it the crazy uncle in Salesforce's attic, right? It bangs around up there. Everybody knows that low adoption is there, but it's like not talked about in polite company, right? So that's the, uh, that's the issue, like with Christian, in Denmark, that's the issue I'm chasing. So no,
Exactly.
it's been good, and it's been very worthwhile. And the people in the ecosystem are great. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, they're doing good things for the world. They're pretty manic about AI at this point. Um, and I think like a lot of people, I've yet to see the high usability, use cases come down the line, but they're coming.
Yeah. Yeah, the certainly the community, Salesforce community, both at the mothership and beyond are is
Oh, yeah.
top notch.
Oh, yeah.
So, well, Larry, if people want to learn more about Leaping Fox and Express Console or the free app Express tasks, how can they best reach you or the company?
Yeah. So probably just start with my website. It's leapingfox, one word.com.
Okay.
There are 4 quick demo videos in about the middle of the page that show each of the major views that are available in my app. And then for the express tasks, well, Leaping Fox slash express dash tasks will take you right to a 90-second, very quick video on what it does. And that can be downloaded from the App Exchange or the Chrome store. So yeah, probably website. I'll throw. I don't know if I should have a sign to put up, but I'm LK Hill at Leaping Fox, and my phone is 203 um, 442-6702.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that. We'll put that in the show notes. And thank you so much for coming on today. I really enjoyed learning more about
Thanks
Leaping
for having
Fox.
me.
Thanks, Larry.
Take care,
Cheers.
Scott. Thanks.